Hi guys, my name is Paul Hill from 1020 Networking. I'm here with colleagues of mine, Claire Butcher and Justin Neale, and we're here to discuss operational excellence. So, Claire.
Yeah, I know everybody's switched off already. Operational excellence. So when we talk about operational excellence, in my experience, a lot of my clients, they spend a lot of time and effort and energy networking, paying for leads, getting leads coming in, and they're really excited the number of leads and the number of connections they get. And then where they actually fail is operationally. So they get all these things coming through the door, but they don't get them out the door in a consistent, blueprinted way, and they're not showing off their best sides. So for me, from what I see from my clients, operational excellence is being excellent at what you do in your business, having your processes, having your blueprints, your staff trained, everybody know what they're doing, and all of that good thing as well. So, and Justin, from your side, it's more on the sort of getting the money right, isn't it? And that side of things.
And I think when you start out with the business, you're always going to have tribal knowledge because it's you starting the business. You might not have staff yet. The knowledge is in your head. And then as you start to grow and you scale, you need consistency. And for me, it sounds, boring, the governance, the compliance that you might need to do, but it's actually an enabler for the business. And where I see businesses struggling is they have an opportunity to quote, customer asks them for a price, and then they panic. And they're saying, and we've got to now come up with a number because they don't have a process behind it. Yeah. And you can suddenly see that when people get their head around the fact that it's not something that's kind of necessarily boring to do, they have to do, but actually they see it as a business enabler, that's when they really pivot to being a business that can scale.
Yeah. And the consistency is really important, right? Because if one client gets a specific level of service from you, and then they recommend a friend or they recommend another client, and that client gets a different price, different service, different way of behaving, that's not helpful. And also, how can you then say your business is ready for the future? Because it doesn't run without you. If you're absolutely significant in that process, because there isn't one, the director's busy going, what should we do today? Or I really want this business. I'm going to cost it this way to land that business. It doesn't lend itself to consistency of approach, doesn't it?
Or if you ever want to have a holiday as a business owner, or to hand over some activities to a team member, you're going to have to tell them exactly how to do it, as opposed to being able to give them a document and say, this is our best practice.
Yeah.
And especially for new hires as well, is you don't want to have to go through the same induction every single time there's a new hire, explaining everything that you do as a business.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, Paul, it's kind of getting it right so that as a business owner, you're comfortable that business does run without you, because there are going to be times. A lot of people go into business because they want a life as well,
absolutely.
right? They don't want to be tied to 12 hours a day working, but you're going to always be tied to that if you don't get your operations like spit spot, okay? Because
So with regard to being spit spot, how is operational excellence and business performance related?
I think completely intertwined. I think what you'll see is that the most profitable businesses are the ones that have the best operational efficiency. And they really take the time to look at every aspect. So you have something called the customer life cycle. That's all the steps that you put a customer through, from the initial awareness of what it is that you offer, all the way through to the sales and marketing, onboarding, the customer support, everything else. That's the life cycle. But each of those is, a process into itself. And within that, you've got many, many sub-processes. And if you think about that as an end-to-end, it's an entity of itself. If each part of that isn't talking to the one before and the one after, then things can very, very quickly fall through the cracks.
yeah,
And that's where businesses suddenly they start to get a bit of success. They start to get more customers coming on board, but then everything falls apart because the business can't scale because they haven't put the processes
Yeah, that's
in
what I was
place.
going to say, actually. So when I work with my customers, I'm often pulled in because they've gotten to a certain size, they're really successful, but they're looking at the numbers, they don't understand them. They don't know how they've got there. They've done it by a wing and a prayer. And they've done really well to get there, but suddenly they're slightly coming unhinged because they're going for the bigger contracts, potentially working with clients that are taking a bit longer to pay. So now they've got cash flow issues. They don't really understand the numbers. They don't know. They're looking at the numbers and going, well, we made more profit when we were at half the turnover. What's happened? And it's like, right, okay, let's unpick. We need to look at. Yeah, exactly.
I think the interesting thing is because off camera we spoke about the numbers, and as soon as we spoke about numbers, both your eyes lit up because you said nobody knows their numbers.
Yeah. And we get different stages. I'm sure Justin will know this and experience this himself. You get different stages. You get guys that don't know the numbers at all. They don't ever look at their P&L. They perhaps don't even capture the numbers properly. They might have a spreadsheet and they let the accountants do it. And then the accountants, if they're not very engaged, will give them once a year, these are your numbers, rather than like help them along the line. And then you get the other level where they do know their numbers and they're all up to date and everything, but they don't really know what they mean. So they don't know what numbers they're looking at. They don't know what they're measuring. They don't know the relationship between profit margins and turnover. And they're just looking at turnover and going, ooh, we've done really well. And it's like, are you though? Let's really look at this. And also, as you grow as a business, everyone does this. And Justin, we were talking about this morning. You buy new software to help your business. You buy a new piece of kit to help your business. And the money starts slightly getting away from you because you don't realise you've got all these subscriptions, you've joined all these clubs, you're not even going to them. You know, we all just personally, right? I mean, how much I spent on the gym one year, I'll never want to admit. But you join all these things and then you don't see them through. So even that in itself, just analysing that so that you're doing the right thing for your operations is so important.
So I'm guessing the numbers aren't just important for that, but it's if you want to sell your business, you know, you've got a business that's turning over 5 million a year, you think it's worth 5, 10, 15, 20 million, but it's not quite the case, is it, Justin?
No, if you imagine, take a car analogy. So if you turn up at a car dealership to sell your car, if you turn up with a car that's dirty, has a couple of scuffs, bit of trim missing, you haven't got a full service history, you've only got one key, the car dealer is going to go kick the tyres and start chipping away at the price. You might have thought that car was worth 20,000. By the time you walk out, you might have 5,000 in your pocket. And it's exactly the same with a business valuation. If you have everything in order, then you are taking away all the excuses a potential buyer has to chip away at your valuation. But most businesses don't have everything together. And so that long list of things which, you know, someone who is really serious about evaluating the overall value of your business is going to start looking at, okay, do you have the processes in place for annual escalation clause for your fees with your clients? Do you actually know your numbers in terms of your margins for the different business units? Do you know your margins by customer? And it's all these little things which actually they're not that hard to put in place, and they're things which then become a lever for you to use in the business. So on a monthly basis, you can go through to see which customers are most profitable, maybe put a little bit of extra effort and care into those and look after them. Look at the ones which are underperforming and try to understand why. Are they not getting something out of your service? Could you actually give them something that's more valuable? But without those things in place, you're trying to run your business by looking in the rearview mirror, because all you're looking at is the results. You're seeing the numbers, the revenue, but you're not looking ahead to understanding, well, what's worked well,
and what impacts what, right?
What's coming down the line.
I think it's important that we're not just talking about this to enable people to sell. It's not just about selling, is it? It's about the performance in general, because you might want to stay as a CEO. You know, you started this business from scratch. You might want to be there until you drop down dead.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's valid as well. But you probably don't want to spend 12 hours a day for the rest of your life running a business and having all of that information up here as opposed to on paper, and have the staff replicating your vision. Because we talked, didn't we, about the staff being, you know, enabling the staff to continue that operational excellence through your business. And how are they going to do that if that isn't written anywhere or isn't shown anywhere or isn't trained anywhere? I mean, I went into a client and did... worked out all their processes. It was very, very dull. I spent 2 years doing this. Okay, it's a really big company. And I found even in a department of 5, 4 people were doing things differently. How does that even... it's incredibly weird. And one person would take 3 hours to do something, whereas the other person who had a bit more sort of tech savvy, perhaps a bit more streamlined, took half an hour. Why didn't that person tell that person... this is how we do this? Because they didn't have this culture of operational excellence. It didn't matter. They were just doing a job.
And the customer experience would be impacted too, because everyone is essentially serving the end customer. And so every one of their customers probably had a different experience as well.
Yeah, and this was a really big corporation.
Culture is one of the words that's sort of become manifest since we came into COVID, but it is really important, isn't it?
Yeah.
Completely. And I think if you have good processes in place and everyone understands them, it is part of your culture, because it tells everyone how you want to do business, why you're doing it more importantly, and it moves the accountability from the person at the top down to the people who are closer to the activity itself. What I tend to find is people ask for help that when they reach a compelling event, and normally it's either their profitability is a problem, they've grown, or they've had some issues, they're losing customers, or they've just hit a revenue ceiling where they've got to, say, 500,000 or 1.5 million a year, and they can't seem to get beyond that point.
Yeah.
And it's where they just don't really understand why. And it makes perfect sense. Most business owners I meet are technically brilliant at what they do. They are amazing in their field, and they do a fantastic job of it, and they built a business around it. But they've never had that formal training of actually how to then scale that, how to bring on board a team, how to develop robust processes. Yeah. And for them, it's usually quite scary until you break it down and show them it's actually very, very simple, and it's not something that you do overnight. It's actually something you work on over a 2 to 3 year period, just gradually improving it, and it never ends. You then introduce that culture of continuous improvement.
Yeah.
But you don't have to do it as the business owner anymore. You then make sure the team are accountable, and the team are the ones who are looking at a process and saying, well, how can we make that a bit quicker? And why do we do that?
Yeah, you hear it so often, don't you? We've always done it that way. So a culture of constant improvement for everybody, it will work for the whole business.
So are you saying that what you do is actually make it an organic process?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, operational excellence is never going to be finished. You are always striving to be more excellent than you were yesterday and the day before. And also, I should be clear, of processes. When you hear the word process, everybody, okay, because people think processes is just a document with a flow chart on it. It doesn't have to be, okay? That might be a process, that might be in your process manual, but however everybody wants to communicate is right too, okay? If a process is up on the wall, or a process is very pictorial, or a process is colour-coded, just make it interesting so people have a willingness to follow it. I do also know businesses that have processes, but they've never tested them. They've never tried them out with their teams. They've never gone to the teams and said, how's this process working out for you? So the teams have learned a long time ago, this process doesn't really work, so they do their own thing anyway. They don't follow the process. So they might have this wonderful process manual, they don't follow it. They just do their own thing. So what's the point?
So do you think that businesses, people looking to buy businesses, are nowadays looking more towards what's embedded as operational excellence rather than just the profit line?
Definitely.
Completely. So the initial valuation might be based on multiples of EBIT or revenue or whatever for that particular industry and that business, those things, those metrics will be. But as soon as they go into the due diligence stage, they will be looking under the hood, and they will be really checking, has this company actually got some legs? If I acquire it, and the owner moves on, what am I left with?
That's the key thing.
Can it run without the owner, and actually without some of the other key people? Because does it have robust processes in place?
Yeah, because anyone buying a business is likely to see some churn, because you potentially will not have the owner anymore, and the people that were really, really loyal to the owner may well not like what's changing, so they may well leave. So it's really important that the buyer's going to go, this business can keep going, and I know I'm at the helm of something that already has a blueprint, already makes money, and we just have to keep that wheel moving. And it's so, so important, isn't it? But I can't stress enough, the amount of times I just see businesses that they've really invested time and money into sales and marketing. They've spent really good money on everything, then getting their proper videos done and everything, which is great, but they don't have it sealed up the other end. So I know people that have left inquiries because they can't get to them, because they're too busy, because they haven't streamlined their operations.
So operational excellence isn't a hot fix, it's a foundation of the coding,
yeah,
if you liken it to a computer.
If you get it right and you turn the lead tap on, wow, here we go. What I mean? Now you've got a business. Yeah, you turn the lead tap on without your operations right, grind to a massive halt.
So it's important to know your numbers.
It's important to know your numbers. It's important to know, and it's important to keep an eye on always, what does the customer need out of this? Because that should drive your operations every time. It's not just about, I've got to get this right. It's about what should the outcome be? How are we going to get reputational clarity here? How is a customer going to be able to recommend me to another customer? Are they always going to get a consistently great service? So yeah, it's quite foundational, really.
I'm just thinking about a question that's come out of this for me. It's like, how do you get those people that are embedded in the way you say, well, we've always done it this way, to adopt the new methods? Because without that,
You've really got to involve them. You've got to involve them from when you start having focus group conversations or anything else about what doesn't work. You need to involve them from that minute, because if you start doing things around them without involving them, they'll be the biggest resistors, because they'll be like, it was fine before. They won't understand what you're trying to achieve.
There will always be a resistance to change.
Yep.
The other problem you have is that when you don't have set processes, there'll be different views as to how it should be done.
Yep.
Now, the way to avoid all of those problems, and this is something which Amazon actually has done really well, is you get the customer in. And ultimately, you're solving a problem. You're selling a service which is bringing your customer a benefit. That's why they're buying something from you. And why would you make any decision that is significant in terms of how you run your business without actually listening to the one person that cares, who is your customer?
It's that focus group, isn't it?
So customer journey mapping is a really powerful tool. If you want to do any large transformation, you actually bring your customer physically or virtually in. You can do it without the customer physically being present by creating the avatar and imagining them. But actually, in most cases, if it's a significant change, I would actually bring the customer in, because often the customer will be really invested in you because you're probably one of their key suppliers. They want you to succeed, and they will be very vocal about the things that they would like to see you do better and what matters to them as your customer. And it's amazing.
I do think that takes a little bit of bravery, because I do know some clients don't even like to ask customers for feedback, let alone asking them, do we do a good job? So I think if anybody's watching this and thinking, asking my customers, I would say, put your brave boots on.
Yeah.
Go, and if you want to ask a favourite one first to soften the blow slightly, that's absolutely fine. But get used to asking your customers, why did you choose me? We've got brave with leads, haven't we? Yeah. We got brave where people go, oh, well, how did you find out about me? People are a little bit brave at asking that question. But I love that question. Why do you choose to use me? Because that will tell me what it is that they like. And more often than not, it's a personal relationship thing. And then you're thinking, okay, so how can I replicate what they love, making sure that the operation delivers that and not just me. Yeah, because again, if you're building that scalable business, it can't just be they work with you because they like you, Justin, right? It's got to be I like the way your business does business.
Absolutely. And you and I both know from work that we do is we have that negativity bias. So we're always going to be looking towards a negative. Why would your customers say something bad about you if they are continually buying from you? They're only going to say good stuff, but here's the thing for improvement. This is what we'd like to have.
Yeah, exactly. Why not? Yeah. Why not learn from that?
What's the one thing you'd like us to do differently?
Absolutely. And you see that on so many, whenever you engage with companies, they will send you one of the satisfaction forms, and it always says, what could we have done better?
Yeah, but again, the problem with forms, it's asking people to take time out of their day. It's asking them to write something up. Will they bother? Wouldn't it be easier just to go for a coffee, have a chat, or invite them in to come and visit the operation and come and chat to some of your staff? Would it be easier for the staff members to ask those questions? Would they feel less intimidated than maybe you asking those questions? Will they give a less biased view? They're not talking to you direct. So there's a bit of bravery involved here, for sure, for people that want to start on this journey, I think.
Yeah, I would. I think definitely recommend starting with that virtual avatar of your customer. Yep. So you give them a picture, a name, their age, their interest. You bring them to life, and you use that, and you say, okay, what would Michael like, or Gladys, or whoever it might be? What would they think of this? What do they need from us? Who is that ideal customer that we're trying to work with? And you can then design a process. But then if you can, and this is not the entire life cycle of working, it's not all the way from the marketing all the way through the sales. You're choosing just one business process, one customer journey. Say, okay, well, how is the contract signature process? How could we optimize that? And you break it down into these very small pieces that suddenly those bite-sized problems that you're trying to solve, and everyone gets engaged. Customer journey mapping is one of the best team-building tools, because everyone just gets behind it and says, okay, we want to design this process, so Michael loves it. How do we make it frictionless? And the good thing about putting these processes in place in a business is it makes the business way more fun to run, because it just suddenly, life's easy. You're sat back thinking, well, it used to take 4 hours to do that. Now it's automated. So what do I do with my time? Actually, I can call some of my customers, see how they are. And so what you see is it's always a bit of a gradual, it's a slow burn. You start introducing these changes, you make small improvements. As long as everyone gets behind it, it starts to snowball. And you'll then start to see the business metrics improve. Your customer lifetime value and customer retention will go up. Average price per customer will go up. Then
Staff churn probably will go down.
Staff churn will go down because they actually enjoy their jobs, because you're not making them do all the admin heavy tasks. They can do higher value activities.
Makes perfect sense.
It does, but I think people put it off because they see it as it's a lot of work. And ultimately, you don't try and how do you eat an elephant?
One piece at a time,
one bite at a time. It's
so find your leaks. Find where you think your perceived leaks are, and start working on that bit. You don't have to do the whole lot all at once.
So this all seems really simple and it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
So why aren't people banging on your door saying,
We've
heard about operational excellence, come and show us, teach us what we do?
They actually are banging on the door,
Good.
actually. So yeah.
I generally has to be, there's a compelling event. Things will normally work well enough up until they don't.
Yeah.
And so quite often a business will scale and then it will start to fall apart. And that's where profitability then goes down, sort of their customer reputation goes down, and that's where they then decide they need some help.
Yeah.
But at that point, there's a heck of a lot of unpicking to do as well. So
it'd be really good if people didn't wait until they were fed up of being fed up.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Ideally.
Yeah, exactly that.
Right. Well, guys, thank you so much.
Thank you.
You've managed to make what ostensibly looked like could have been a boring subject into something that even I want to follow. So thank you, Claire, and thank you, Justin.